For more content like this, visit MenAreGood.substack.com. Men are good, as are you. Indeed, men are good, as are you. And you know what's not good? The idea that misogyny is extremism. Misogyny is extremism. What in the hell is that all about? Well, I'll tell you what it's about. There's this global movement now that's trying to say that misogyny, the hatred of women, is extremism. And the problem is they define misogyny in very tame sorts of ways, and we'll see some of the ways they do it. But what is going on with this? Well, you know what's going on with this. Feminists for decades have done what? They have pathologized anyone who disagrees with them. They've said anybody who disagrees has got to be wrong. They're a misogynist, they're hateful, they're an anti-feminist. All these words they have for people who disagree with their way of seeing the world. This is not something that is like, we hate you. It's like, no, we disagree with your idea about women. Women were oppressed. No, I'm not so sure that's correct. Now that's seen as extremism. In fact, some people go as far as saying, oh, that's terrorism. So they're getting governments involved now in whipping up this idea that misogyny is extremism. And they're doing it, why? Because they don't know how to defend their own position. Why don't they know how to defend their own position? Because they've never defended their own position. They've always silenced the opposition and shut them up, right? Instead of trying to explain their position. When someone says, well, I don't think that's the case. I don't think women were oppressed. Then they can say, well, I think it was this way because this, and this. Then they can have a back and forth going. But no, they don't allow that. That's misogyny. Questioning them is misogyny. Oh boy, crazy stuff, right? So this is global. As Janice Fiamengo did an article about we're all terrorists now, what's going on with this in England, mostly in England. She did some other stuff too. And I did one about the Diverting Hate group where the Department of Homeland Security funded this study for $700,000 about hate. And they're saying the Manosphere is hateful. And here, this is the quiz they have in that thing they funded. And these are 15 questions, right? And if you answer, I think it's more than 7 of them in the affirmative, then you must be a misogynist. Oh, God. And look at these questions. Feminism is about hating men. Okay, there's one right there. I mean, the Washington Post had an article by a feminist saying, why can't we hate men? Right? And it goes on and on. Feminists are seeking to control men. Yeah, I've got to go along with that. I mean, there's all kinds of... The first 5 are pretty much factual. The last 5 are pretty much factual. The middle ones are almost a little bit more opinions, but still... I mean, look what they're doing. They're feeding this idea that if you have even the slightest disagreement with feminists, you must be a misogynist. And if you're a misogynist, then you're also an extremist. And we need to shut you up. That's what this is all about, shutting people up. Now, why do you think it's coming up now? It's coming up now because they're losing. They're losing. What we're going to see today, we're going to look at the Australian piece of things, and it's fascinating. What we find in the Australian piece is, guess who's actually doing the work of all this? 10-year-old boys. 10-year-old boys are getting out there and they're quoting Andrew Tate in their classrooms. They're quoting Andrew Tate, and the teachers cannot stand it. They don't know what to do with it. In fact, you'll see they literally say they're helpless to respond to the things about Andrew Tate. What does that tell you? They're helpless. In the same way a feminist is helpless in responding to factual questions about what she's talking about. So the 10-year-olds are out there, and wait till you hear about what the teachers say about these 10-year-olds and what the kinds of things they do. It's all just amazing. And, the reason I think that we're winning here and they're losing is because you don't throw a Hail Mary pass when you're winning. You don't do that. You strive for extremes when you're losing, when you're really down, when you have to come up. And this is like a Hail Mary as far as I'm concerned. But the good news is they are losing, I think. I think they are. And this is a way to try and get around it. Try and make the law so that you can't disagree with feminists. Let's make that the law. Yeah, well, let's look at Australia, what they're doing down there. Oh, gosh. I saw this article in the College Fix. Scholars aim to tackle toxic masculinity in high school. Blame Jordan Peterson. They blame Jordan Peterson for toxic masculinity in high school. Okay, Jordan Peterson. Yeah. Project will create early intervention programs to help teachers end misogyny. So they want to end misogyny. They want to end disagreement with feminism. Yeah. Well, listen to this. The university blamed notorious masculinity influencers, or what they call manfluencers. Oh boy. Including former University of Toronto professor Jordan Peterson for perpetuating harmful ideologies around sexism and misogyny, which are filtering through to boys and young men's behavior in the classroom. And they can't stand this. They can't stand these young boys bringing this stuff up. The boys don't even have to say, I believe this or that. They just say, oh, Andrew Tate says such and such. It drives the teachers absolutely nuts because they don't know how to respond. It's so easy. All you'd have to say is, well, that's what Andrew Tate says, but what do you think? Get them talking about things. But instead of getting them talking or having an interchange or saying, no, I don't think that's really the case because this and that, they're going to try and pathologize it. They're going to try and shut these boys up. Oh boy, now who is this Jordan Peterson, and what does he talk about? Jordan Peterson says toxic masculinity is an attempt to smear masculinity by confusing masculine competence with tyranny. Does that sound like such a bad thing to you? Does that sound like he's teaching these boys how to hate? No, it's Jordan Peterson that says, stand up straight. It's Jordan Peterson that says, clean your room. It's Jordan Peterson that says, finish your own psychological stuff before you start pointing the finger at other people. That's not hateful. Of course, then the Australian piece doesn't just talk about Peterson. They mention him, but really they're talking about Andrew Tate. Now, Andrew Tate is a little more provocative. He's a little more provocative, and he says things about women's roles. You know, I'd like to see women focus on having babies and being in the kitchen, right? And that's his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. But guess what? Don't you think women for years have been saying, oh, we expect men to protect us. Why aren't they protecting us from domestic violence? It's men's responsibility. It's kind of the same thing, don't you think? In fact, if you look at what the feminists have said over the years, you get a kind of a different view of all this. Oh boy, why can't we hate men? To call a man an animal is to flatter him. I feel man-hating is an honorable and viable political act. All men keep all women in a state of fear. All men are rapists, and that's all they are. I want to see a man beaten to a bloody pulp with a high heel shoved in his mouth. I mean, this is hate. This is misandry. Come on. Are men, Jordan Peterson and Tate, doing anything like that? Hell no. But this stuff has gone on for years, for decades, and no one has said jack or shit about it. No one, no woman, no man. They, oh, well, there's a feminist. Blah, 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 blah. No. If you're going to say misandry or misogyny is extremism, then we better start saying that these feminists are extremists. You know, they're terrorists. They're terrorizing men. I mean, the double standard is just so blatant. It's hard to imagine anything more blatant than this. You know, that they're going to try and stop boys from talking about Andrew Tate and try and make sure the feminists can keep talking about how much they hate men. It's absolutely bizarre. It's totally bizarre. Anyway, the research article. This is the Australian group. The article from College Fix talked about this Australian group of 3 women, I think it is, and I've written to all of them, and none of them have gotten back to me. It's been a week and a half now since I wrote to them. Nobody's gotten back to me. I can't understand why. I wrote them a really nice note. It wasn't anything male advocating. It was just, you know, I'm interested in learning more about your program. Blah, 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 blah. Can you send me a link or some information? That's all it was. And they won't respond. That tells you something in itself. Anyway, so The problem of anti-feminist manfluencer Andrew Tate, and this is research, right? They call him a manfluencer. In Australian schools, women teachers' experiences of resurgent male supremacy. So they're saying that Andrew Tate is activating all of these little boys to bring back male supremacy. Ay, 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 can you believe it? So they've funded, I think it's a couple $1 million, they've funded a group of researchers to research this so that they can find out what's going on with these extreme misogynists, these little boys in school, and high school boys too, what's going on with these boys and how they can stop this stuff. Okay, so let's go through a little bit about the abstract and what they say, because that tells us a little bit more about things. Toxic masculinity and misogynistic gender narratives are gaining traction online and in Australian classrooms, threatening gender equality and contributing to gender-based violence. Okay, wait a minute. Back up. Let's back up just a minute here. Is there any evidence at all that this is contributing to gender-based violence? No, but it's their way of saying this is important. This is so important that we're protecting women from violence if we can slow down this extreme misogyny. But that's BS. There's no connection with gender-based violence and the kinds of questions we're going to talk about in just a minute. I mean, geez, it's absolutely insane. So gender-based stuff is gaining traction, right? Yeah. Education professor Stephanie Westcott said in the release she has seen an alarming increase in reports from female teachers about sexual harassment and other harmful behaviors by boys in classrooms, often linked to narratives and ideologies unmistakably derived from Manosphere content. Oh, yeah. Now, notice that when they say this, they say reports from female teachers about sexual harassment and other harmful behaviors by boys in classrooms. They don't tell you what the behaviors are. In fact, in the whole research study, very few examples were given of what actually happens, what they're worried about. So it's hard to really tell what they're talking about with what really happens. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to the ones that they did list, and you'll see how nutty they are. Oh boy, these hateful things these 10-year-olds are saying. There's a growing visibility of online manfluencers who espouse extreme masculine ideals and share them with their audiences of boys and young men. Yeah, guess what's happening? What do Tate and Jordan Peterson have in common? What are they telling these boys, these young men? What are they telling them? I'll tell you what they're telling them. They're telling them they have worth. They have worth in just being young men. They have worth in being boys. And that's the exact opposite of what these frickin' schools have been telling them for years. Oh no, the girls are the future is female, la la la, boys oppressed, blah 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 blah. All that crap, making them feel bad about themselves. Then Jordan Peterson comes along. Andrew Tate comes along and said, wait a minute, guys, you've been screwed in some ways. But you have worth. You have worth just in being you. How are you going to react to that? You're going to go, yeah, I like that. I can put up with that, right? Instead of this crap they've taken for decades, finally someone's saying something positive. And of course, it's on the internet. And so the feminists can't control it. They can't shut all that down. So they better find a way to globally do this, right? That's what they're trying to do. Yeah, oh boy. Taking this phenomenon as a launchpad, we join the tradition of research that exposes sexism in schools and theorizes girls' and women's experiences of working within and against masculine hegemony. So they're saying, we're just taking one more step in the fight against sexism in schools. I don't think that's true at all. I think they're taking one more step in order not to have to argue their case, in order to try and shut down the people who are questioning them, in order to silence 10-year-old boys. I don't see much to be proud of in that kind of thing. Drawing on qualitative interviews with 30 women teachers. Okay, think about that. They only interviewed female teachers. Why? Why would they only interview female teachers? Well, guess what? If you read the whole report, read the whole piece of research, They imply a couple of times that, oh, these male teachers, they aren't having this problem. They're not having this problem because the men teachers know what to do with it. They shut the kids up if they need to, or they let them talk. They don't care, right? Oh, well, male teachers are different. They're going to, and that's the whole thing about leadership. Leadership requires someone to take charge of things, right? To be in charge. And these female teachers, I think, are lacking somehow this capacity to take charge, right? If they're running from 10-year-old boys who talk about Andrew Tate, I mean, that's not good. Male teachers don't have a problem with it. Okay. We suggest the sexism identified in early research endures in schools today, resurrected in part by the ubiquity and influence of one specific misogynist, manfluencer Andrew Tate. So they're blaming it all on Tate, a 30-something guy, right, who has a YouTube channel and has millions of followers, right? And he gets the word out there. But, geez, he's just one guy. But they're petrified. They're absolutely petrified. Isn't that interesting? Employing Connell's hegemonic masculinity, we suggest boys' sexist practices towards their teachers and girls' peers forms a part of a strategy of gender inequality legitimization, stabilizing and reinvigorating a regressive male supremacy. Oh boy. First off, does anybody know who Connell is? Connell's the guy who wrote the book on masculinity that all these academics love. They absolutely love it. Well, Division 51 loves it, if that tells you anything. Let's just say Connell is a trans woman. And so he went from being a man to being a trans woman, and that tells you what he thought about masculinity. So I think he's got a little bit of a biased viewpoint there. Anyway, they're depending on Connell's information underneath all this, big words, legitimization, stabilizing, and reinvigorating a regressive male supremacy. They're talking about shutting up little boys. They're talking about shutting up little boys. They're thinking little boys are bringing back male supremacy? Well, first off, there was no such thing as male supremacy. Well, maybe here and there. But bringing it back through 10-year-olds, these people are paranoid. Oh, well. These behaviors represent a backlash from boys and men who perceive a loss of gendered power in the post-Me Too era and have implications for girls and women in schools. So they're saying they think the boys are having a backlash from the Me Too piece, where they felt less empowered from Me Too, and therefore now they're kind of being tough guys. No, I think that they've just gotten a dose or two more of Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, a lot of other people. They're getting out there and hearing what's out there. And they're putting it out in school, and the teachers really, really don't like this. Yeah, and here's how they don't like it. Teachers in our study consider it unmistakable that Tate's positioning of men as victims of progressive culture that affords women opportunities to compensate for historical inequities has found appeal among boys. Oh, God. I mean, they're just saying that, wait a minute, Tate's telling him that they've been discriminated against. That couldn't be true. No, boys couldn't be discriminated against, so they must be taking it out on women. They observed boys' alignment with Tate's ideology and its manifestation in sexist classroom interactions, coupled with boys' expressed admiration of Tate's overt and exorbitant wealth as a complementary part of an appealing model of masculinity. Yeah, that's appealing. I mean, boys look up to people who are very wealthy. They look up to sports heroes. They look up to people who are in big leadership positions. But the next sentence tells you everything you need to know. Interviewees read 30 female teachers report feeling powerless to counter these views. That's the most important sentence in the whole thing. Interviewees, everyone they interviewed, report feeling powerless to counter these views. That tells you everything you need to know. I mean, these teachers are feeling powerless around high school boys or young boys. I think Janice said, this is one good reason to make sure that we have all boys schools with all male teachers. And I couldn't agree more. Report feeling powerless to counter these views. Like, come on, this is an opinion. This is an opinion. Deal with it. Speaking to this fractured classroom dynamic, Amanda stated that it's safer to talk about racism than it is to talk about Andrew Tate. For her, maybe, an observation that speaks to the volatile classroom cultures in which teachers must respond to his influence. Oh boy. So let's get to a couple of the things that they said that the boys did. Here's one. This is probably the worst one. Sarah shares an incident perpetrated by a boy in her English class who knew she really didn't like her because she perceives she is a woman. Sarah recalls her experience of confronting and responding to ongoing hostility and misogyny from this particular student. So she and the student have never gotten along for whatever reasons. Maybe it's boys and girls, maybe it's not. Over the course of the year, culminating in a violent incident, she explains. He ended up, spitting in my water bottle. That's a violent incident. That level of just gendered anger towards me, it's not anything I'm doing. It's not anything I'm doing. Oh, God. Oh, man, can you imagine the mentality of someone saying that? You know, spitting in my water bottle, that level of just gendered anger towards me, it's not anything I'm doing. She's completely missing that, human interactions are always two-way. It's not just a one-way, especially if you're the teacher, for crying out loud. But it's not anything I'm doing. And this tells you, again, why these teachers would say they're helpless in responding to these kinds of things. She is thinking, there's nothing I'm doing, honey. You sit down with me for 30 minutes and we'll tell you what you're doing that pisses him off, that gets him upset. You're telling him things probably for the whole year about boys are this and boys are that, or girls are great, or girls are wonderful. You don't think he's going to get pissed off? You're probably lucky he didn't smack you upside the head with a 2x4. And he didn't. He just spit in her water bottle, which is not a great idea. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing to do. But it does say that this was a young man who was getting upset with her. And at least he expressed it in a way that wasn't really violent. The other thing is, she saw him do it. So it wasn't like he did it clandestinely and she never knew it. It's like, he said, oh, yeah? Oh, well, anyway. This episode, the last one, captures a distinct example of masculinist supremacy. So spitting in a water bottle is masculinist supremacy, where an act of degradation illustrates an effort to reassert masculine dominance through intimidation. Sarah also recalled an incident of a student approaching her and saying, "Miss, your boobs look really big today." I read that, I burst out laughing. Can you see some 10-year-old, 12-year-old saying to some teacher who's maybe well endowed, maybe not, "Miss, your boobs look really big today"? It's an innocent sounding thing, but it really threw her into the stratosphere. Paralleling the quote in the title of Robinson 2000, and more commonly, you just hear them talking behind your back about you and what you're wearing. Well, don't women like people talking about what they're wearing? Anyway, this is an illustration of the kinds of things. In fact, these are the only two things just about the examples. He says stuff that if you just look at it on the surface sounds pretty good, right? She's talking about Peterson and Tate also. You deserve respect. You deserve someone to look after you. Let's read that again. This is what she says they're being told. You deserve respect. You deserve someone to look after you. And so they hear that and they think, I mean, it does sound good, right? She's thinking, it sounds good. Why are these boys so angry? Why are they so nasty? Why are they so misogynist? Oh, man. Just absolutely insane what's happening today. In Australia, you are really pissing the bed here. I mean, this is just, you're going through all kinds of research drama to try and silence little boys and young men from calling out feminist ideas. And that's just not going to last. That's why I think we're winning. I think people are going to start seeing that this is simply not the case, that this is just over the edge. It's over the top. It's just not going to work like this. Yeah. Similarly, Sarah, a government school teacher in Melbourne, observed a masculinist supremacist ideology infiltrating her English class in other pernicious ways. For example, she recalls, if we read something that's by a woman, boys say, why do we have to read this myth? That's misogynistic and pernicious and male supremacist? Or if we read a poem that deals with the woman's experience, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's like, this is, these are literally the only examples they gave in this crazy research. 16 pages, single space pages, every 20 times a page. These sexist comments in schools, the way the teachers are treated is ridiculous. It's terrible. They're having to put up with extreme views, blah, blah. And they can't really give you any examples. And look at the examples they give you. It's just so piss poor. Oh, well, on that shape, on that space. Yeah, misogyny is extremism. So this is probably coming to a town near you. Be aware of what this may be near you. Be aware that this is coming and that they're going to start talking about it and be able to start saying, no, this is not extremism. This is an opposing view. Can we have different views about the same event? And the answer is, of course, yes. But not according to feminism, and that's what it's all about. So, as usual, keep in mind, guys, men are good, as are you. We'll see you then. Men are good, as are you.